When you think of Virginia Woolf, you probably think of this absolute master of the written word. But she was more than that. She was a warrior. She was fighting a hidden war, one of ideas, creativity, and identity. So today, we're going to unpack the incredible metaphor she used to map out this invisible battle that creative women face. And it all starts with identifying the main villain in her story, which really brings us to the key question. What in the world is an angel in the house? The answer to this is the key to unlocking her entire struggle.
You see, for Woolf, the real challenge wasn't just how a woman could create something amazing. It was, what does it take to even clear out enough mental space to begin? This was a battle fought on a totally silent internal front.
And to win that battle, you first have to name your enemy. She called hers the angel in the house. Now, this wasn't a real person. It was an idea, an invisible prison built entirely out of societal expectations.
So what is this angel? Well, think of the idealized Victorian woman. You know, she's perfectly sympathetic, always charming, and completely, utterly selfless. She never has a single thought or wish of her own. For a writer like Woolf, this figure was like a ghost haunting her ambition, constantly whispering in her ear to be nice, to flatter, and to never, ever be angry.
And here's the really tricky part. The angel wasn't just some external pressure from the outside world. It was a ghost that got inside your head. It created what Woolf saw as these invisible chains, psychological barriers that made women limit their own ambitions before anyone else even had a chance to.
Woolf saw this whole system as a kind of architecture of confinement. It starts with the cage, the broad prison of gender norms. Then that cage is built inside the house, which is the trap of domestic life. And within that house, a woman sees herself only through the mirror of male perception. All of this forces her onto the stage to perform an ideal role instead of, living an actual, authentic life. But Virginia Woolf was not one to stay imprisoned. She knew you had to fight, and for her, the very first act of a woman writer was to kill the angel in the house. But if you're going to fight a war, you need a base of operations, right? For Woolf, this was famously a room of one's own. This meant a literal physical space, but also a figurative one, a space free from interruption where a woman's mind could finally operate on its own terms. And it's in that room that the power dynamic becomes crystal clear. For centuries, silence was a tool of suppression. So for Woolf, the simple act of speaking up, of writing your own truth, wasn't just creative expression. It was an act of rebellion. It was a way of claiming your own existence. Okay, so you've got your space and you've found your voice. What's next? You arm yourself. Woolf lays out this entire arsenal of intellectual and creative weapons that are absolutely necessary for this fight.
And her arsenal was just full of these powerful ideas. The pen becomes a tool of defiance. The sword is your intellect, sharp enough to defend your ideas and attack old ones. The fire of mind represents that unstoppable creative passion. And the voice becomes the tool for speaking your authentic truth, finally free from the pressure to please everyone.
It really all boils down to this one central conflict. The sword of a woman's courage and intellect fighting against the shadow of that angel, that ghost of convention. This is the fight between pure, unfiltered creativity and the immense pressure to conform. And what was she fighting for? The freedom of the mind itself. Woolf imagined the female consciousness not as something delicate, but as an absolute force of nature. It had the depth of the sea, the rhythmic power of waves, and the creative intensity of a flood, something that simply could not be contained. Winning this war wasn't just about destroying something old, it was about building something new. This whole struggle leads from a personal awakening to a whole new vision for the future. Woolf basically lays out a clear path. It all starts with acknowledging the chains. You have to see the prison for what it is. Next is finding your voice to break that imposed silence. And this journey all culminates in the birth of the self, where a woman is finally reborn as an independent creator. So what does this liberated world actually look like? Well, Woolf paints a pretty hopeful picture. She gives us the window, a view towards a more equal future. She gives us light, revealing the truth of women's experiences, no longer hidden in shadow. And finally, she gives us a bridge of words, allowing a woman to connect her true inner self to the wider world. And this really is the core of it all. For Woolf, writing served two absolutely critical purposes. It was an act of connection to yourself and to others, but it was always an act of rebellion against the forces that were demanding your silence.
Ultimately, all of Woolf's work, all of these incredible metaphors, they serve as a bridge to the future. It's a call to action for the generations of women to come, asking them to pick up their own pens and continue the fight for creative and intellectual freedom.
You know, Woolf fought the angel in the house over a century ago, which leaves us with a pretty big question for today. What modern-day ghosts, what unseen pressures and inherited ideals are still haunting our ambitions? What invisible chains are we still trying to break?